Hello, welcome to another webinar hosted by the Weatherization Assistance Program. Today we will discuss more about historic preservation. My name is Felix Vasquez Guimares, and I am fellow at the Weatherization Assistance Program. So today we will discuss historic preservation and the basics. We will talk about the programmatic prototype agreements, renewing these agreements, and we will also discuss the annual historic preservation report and the main inconsistencies found in this report. Historic Preservation 101. Historic preservation is a professional endeavor that seeks to preserve, conserve, and protect homes, buildings, objects, landscapes, or other artifacts of historic significance under the National Historic Preservation Act. The National Historic Preservation Act directs DOE to accomplish two primary tasks. Number one, take into account the effects of their actions on historic property. And number two, provide the Advisory Council on Historic Preservation, the ACHP, a reasonable opportunity to comment. The ACHP administers the National Historic Preservation Act Section 106 review process and works with federal agencies to ensure compliance with their Section 106 responsibilities and to help improve how they consider historic preservation values in their programs. Moreover, Section 106 applies to historic properties that are listed in or are eligible for listing in the National Register of Historic Places. Section 106 is a framework for problem solving grounded in consultation while providing stakeholders access to federal decision making. Results of Section 106 consultation range from full preservation to total loss of historic properties. In 2010, DOE and the ACHP and the National Conference of State Historic Preservation Officers, NCSHPO, developed a prototype programmatic agreement for purposes of complying with Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act. This was done to address the unprecedented large volume of projects that required historic preservation reviews that resulted from the implementation of the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act. In order to provide continuity within the Section 106 review process, the historic preservation agreements were extended by DOE and the ACHP through December 31st, 2020. The PAs offer a streamlined process for DOE to comply with Section 106 requirements by authorizing recipients to conduct a portion of DOE Section 106 compliance requirements and by providing broad categories of activities that are exempt from further Section 106 review. Currently, 47 out of the 57 WAP grantees have executed PAs. You can follow along in this link to look if your state has a DOE executed PA. To ensure DOE's compliance with Section 106, some changes were made to the recipient's 2019 terms and conditions. For those recipients with a DOE executed PA, language from the PA was added to the terms and conditions to highlight those stipulations. For those recipients with an interagency agreement, and this is an agreement signed by a state office and the State Historic Preservation Office, but not DOE, these are required to follow the stipulations outlined in the terms and conditions, just like recipients with a DOE executed PA. However, those recipients that do not have a DOE executed PA nor an interagency state agreement have a NEPA determination and terms and conditions that state all activities are restricted to structures less than 45 years old. For program year 2019, recipients with an interagency state agreement have the same requirements in their NEPA determination and terms and conditions as recipients with a DOE executed PA. However, and this is very important, next year, recipients without a DOE executed PA, which includes those recipients that have an interagency state agreement or don't have any agreement at all, could be required to submit all projects to the NEPA office at DOE for review. That's why DOE and the Weatherization Assistance Program is encouraging all recipients to have a DOE executed PA so they have the benefits of a streamlined Section 106 review. These agreements are set to expire in December 31st, 2020. DOE has begun the process of requesting the renewal with ACHP and NICSHPO to further the 2020 expiration date and must demonstrate compliance with Section 106. In the conversations and meetings that we have had with ACHP, they have said that they are open to renewing the agreement only if they determine that there is a large volume of projects that require expedited historic preservation reviews to ensure the timely obligation of funds. Because of this, DOE will analyze the report for inconsistencies and provide ACHP with the most accurate information in order to make the best case possible to renew these agreements. In order to address these issues, however, we will need to reach out individually to grantees to ask you to withdraw the report and correct it if we find some inconsistencies with your answers. And now we will go over the Annual Historic Preservation Report in PAGE, the Performance and Accountability for Grants and Energy. To log into PAGE, you will need to access the internet and go to www.page.energy.gov. You are able to contact PAGE, and if you have any difficulties or questions at PAGE, P-A-G-E, hotline at ee.doe.gov. And here in the page, in the screenshot, you will see that you will be asked to enter your required login credentials. Next, you will choose the applicable program. We're going to be focusing today on the Weatherization Assistance Program, and you will see that in the left column of your screen. As you can see here, when you select the Weatherization Assistance Program, you will have a drop-down menu in the left-hand side of your screen where you will find the Annual Historic Preservation Report. Based on your logging, a specific grant or grants will be listed. Click on the grant you wish to submit a report. Note, if you do have more than one active grant, you will have to submit an Annual Historic Preservation Report for each of those grants. The Historic Preservation Report is tied up to the fund. So if you have 2 or more grants, you will have to submit 2 or more reports. Once you click the Annual Historic Preservation, you will be able to select the period. Once you do that, you will then click on View to open the report, and we will go over the questions now. All recipients are required to submit the Annual Historic Preservation Report, as I said, for each of the grants that they have active. DOE has created additional guidance to assist recipients in completing their report. The guidance for the Historic Preservation Report is the addition of the blue text. However, we do want to point out that the addition of blue text, you will be able to find it in the guidance, but not in PAGE. Weatherization Program Notice 19.6, DOE guidance for completing recipient's Annual Historic Preservation Report. As you can see, the blue text is clarifying guidance. You're able to find it in the program guidance link at the ERE website and the Weatherization Program website. And now we will go over these questions more in depth. So the first questions are auto-filled from login, except the drop-down box at login that I showed you previously, and that's the Historic Preservation reporting period. This should be September 1st, 2018 to August 31st, 2019. The grant number will be auto-filled from logging, as well as the state where the recipient is located and the name of the recipient. Question 1C. Ask, have you utilized a U.S. DOE executed historic preservation programmatic agreement between DOE, your state, and the State Historic Preservation Office in order to comply with National Historic Preservation Act requirements for all or some of your U.S. DOE-funded EECBG, WAP, or SEP activities? If your answer is yes, it will be because your state or territory has a U.S. DOE executed historic preservation PA. No will mean that your state or territory does not have a U.S. DOE executed historic preservation PA. As we noted before, 47 of the 57 grantees do have a DOE executed PA. One of the main inconsistencies that we found in the report that was recently submitted by all grantees was question 1C. As I said, there are 47 WAP grantees that do have the DOE PA. However, out of those, 7 states still answered no. This prompts Page to hide the subsequent questions, and as a result, these grantees are not reporting correctly. Moving along, question 1B asked if your answer to 1C above is no, so that means that you do not have a DOE PA, then for any activities for which you did not utilize the DOE executed PA for historic preservation review, have you otherwise complied with National Historic Preservation Act requirements for those activities? DOE may contact you for additional information and clarification to your responses below. So here are 3 different answers. Yes would mean that your state or territory has addressed the National Historic Preservation Act requirements by submitting projects to DOE for review. No would mean that your state or territory has not addressed the National Historic Preservation Act requirements. And not applicable, and A would mean that your state or territory has a state interagency agreement or a DOE PA for historic preservation. We want to reemphasize here that if you do have a DOE executed prototype agreement, your answer to this question should be NA, not applicable. Your state is already complying. If you do not have an agreement, your answer should be yes. My state or territory has addressed the National Historic Preservation Act requirements by submitting projects to DOE and your SHPO for review. If you do answer no, and we want to reemphasize that, that would mean that you have not addressed at all the National Historic Preservation Act. So those 16 grantees that answered no means that they have not addressed the National Historic Preservation Act, and we know that's incorrect. So you need to correct this. The correct answer, as I said, should be either NA for those that have the state interagency agreement or similar agreement for historic preservation, or yes for those that do not have any agreement but have submitted their projects to DOE and their SHPO for review. Moving along, question 1E. Ask the total number of activities being undertaken with DOE funds, whether your state does or does not have a U.S. DOE executed PA or a state interagency agreement or a similar agreement for historic preservation. And here note that the term activities for purposes of the Weatherization Assistance Program means weatherized units, and these are the projects funded in whole or in part by DOE WAP funds. One other inconsistency that we found in the report was that the answer to question 1E should be the total number of units weatherized in the reporting period from 9/1/18 to 8/31/19. Be mindful of this reporting period because all the other reports that you have to submit in Page are not within the same time frame. To reemphasize, the term activities means weatherized units funded in whole or in part by DOE Weatherization Program. We're anticipating that this response will need to be addressed by almost all the grantees. You should note that ultimately, the number of the units reported in answer 2A, 2B, 2C, and 3A should equal the number of units answered for 1E, the total number of activities, units weatherized in the reporting period from 9/1/18 to 8/31/19. Following along, question 2A asks to identify the number of activities that were exempt from further historic preservation review under the U.S. DOE executed PA due to property age. Here you will list those activities that are under 50 years old. Out of your total units that you weatherized in that reporting period, how many of them were under the age, the property age, either 50 or 45, depending on your agreement? Question 2B asks to identify the number of activities exempt per Appendices A and B of the U.S. DOE executed PA. So these will be those activities that you can find in Appendix A for the weatherization program in your DOE executed prototype agreement. You will list those here in 2B. Question 2C asks to identify the number of activities exempt from further historic preservation review under the PA due to a prior review under a Section 106 agreement for a community development block grant. Question 3. For any activities that you did not identify in any of the previous categories that I just mentioned as exempt from further review, please list the following. 3A asks you if the number of Section 106 reviews completed under the U.S. DOE executed PA. This is the total number of activities that underwent a full Section 106 review of the National Historic Preservation Act as outlined under Stipulation 6 to 10 of the U.S. DOE executed PA and terms and conditions for state interagency agreements or similar agreement for historic preservation. Here we want to reemphasize that the numbers entered in 2A plus 2B plus 2C plus 3A should equal question 1E. That is the total number of units that you weatherized in the reporting period. Question 3A basically is asking you if those activities were not exempted, which one of those did you forward it to your state historic preservation office for further Section 106 review? If you have any questions, please look at the guidance posted in the energy.gov ERE website. You can contact me at felix.vasquez-gamarez, Guemarez, at ee.voe.gov. You can also contact the NEPA office for historic preservation issues at gonepa at ee.voe.gov with a copy to your project officer. And you can also look at the executed programmatic agreement at the ereenergy.gov website. Thank you very much for your attention. We will talk soon.